The halfway point in the 2022 Intelligent Money British GT Championship brings us to the Snetterton 300 circuit and the second double-header event of the season. We kick things off with two 60-minute races at Alton Park over Easter weekend, and now it is back to the sprint race format. Two 60-minute races tomorrow, both with a mandatory pit stop in the middle, and this afternoon a set of 4 qualifying sessions which will give us the grids for those two races tomorrow. It's a very pleasant summer's afternoon, a bit breezy here, admittedly, at Snetterton, but the temperatures are just starting to creep into the 20s and the track temperature getting warmer and warmer as well. And that means that the drivers should be able to get immediately up to speed in these very short 10-minute qualifying sessions. They don't have a lot of time to get themselves into the groove. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box, joined once again this weekend by Joe Osborne, and Joe knows a thing or two about qualifying on pole here at Snetterton. I was doing some research and you were on the GT4 pole here a few laps ago, a few years ago even. Difficult place to hook up a lap though. It's a long lap and it's got a little bit of everything, hasn't it? Yeah, definitely. Second in length, obviously, the Silverstone GP circuit, so it's a very long lap. GT4-wise, you're just creeping under the 2-minute barrier. And really, with 14 corners and a real mixture, there's always a chance you're going to at least mess up one of them. So it is very difficult to nail the lap. It is certainly a challenging circuit. One of the drivers who will be taking on that challenge in a moment or two is Flick Haig, and she's down in the pit lane with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, she is indeed. It's great to see Flick back and Johnny as well, and a bit of revenge maybe from Silverstone. It's nice to see you back here at Snetterton.
Yeah, thank you. You know, we've been really pleased with the weekend so far. We've made some progress, so yeah, we'll see what we can do in the qualifying. So
we've looked at all the practice times, and they seem to be a little bit of a hard one to gain anything from. Is it that in practice so far you've just been taking it easy, particularly in the last session?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting to know the car. Johnny's obviously fully up to speed, but it's been 3 years for me out, so yeah, I've got a lot of homework to do.
Well, a lot of people have got some homework to do, but you're set at the start of the pit wall well, so you should be good to get away in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, ready to go.
Good luck. We'll catch up with you later on. There you go, Flick Haig. Nice to hear from her.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bryn Lucas, who's going to be up and down the pit lane all throughout the qualifying sessions, chatting to those doing well, and tomorrow digging out the stories in the two races. Well, I said it was a bit blustery here this afternoon. It is a very stiff breeze. It's a crosswind across the start-finish straight. So as we're looking at the circuit there, from the right of shot to the left is the way the wind is blowing. In a GT car, which is reasonably aerodynamically dependent, Joe, how much of an effect does a blustery day like this have on the handling of the cars? Yeah, massively. I was actually out yesterday in the GT3 McLaren doing a few laps, and into the last corner, as you come around Coram, suddenly the wind is right on the tail of the car, and I had some huge slides, and obviously it's good fun, but it's not particularly a good way to produce a fast lap time. So it really does have a negative effect in that way. But then sometimes, and as a racing driver, you always think it's you, but then like the wind is right on the head of the car for turn 3 Palmer. And normally it's quite a heavy brake and a downshift. And yesterday, I just thought I'm going to try no brake and just a lift. And because the wind speed was literally 20, 25 miles an hour, it was enough to get rid of a whole brake zone. So it is really, really dependent in a big road-looking GT car. Shows you how quick these cars have become over the last 5 or 6 years, really. They are astonishing bits of kit. I will never tire of standing trackside watching free practice, as I did this morning, and just seeing the look of the cars around the circuit, hearing the noises of them as well. And it's something that we will now get to enjoy over, as I said, 4 10-minute qualifying sessions, 2 for GT3, 2 for GT4. I'm sure many of you at home are very familiar with how this qualifying format works, but if you're new to the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, there will be 2 sessions for GT3. This is qualifying 1 for GT3. The AM drivers will be in the cars for this session. The pro drivers will jump in for session 2. And unlike the single race events, where it's a combined qualifying time that gives you the grid, here each driver has a qualifying session to themselves and a race start to themselves. So the drivers that are in Q1, the AM drivers, will set the time for the grid for race 1, and they will start race 1 tomorrow. The pro drivers set the grid for race 2, which is the race for which they are out first. So that's how it works. Then we then do the same thing for the GT4 cars later on. It is the number 15 Mercedes which leads the field out of the pit lane. Joe, Mercedes are looking strong here this weekend, aren't they? In particular, the number 4 2Cs Motorsports car. Lewis Williamson fastest in both free practice sessions, and in FP2 this afternoon, he was comfortably underneath the lap record. So Mercedes the car to have, it would seem. Yeah, definitely, and I think that really is alluding to that aerodynamic platform
one we were talking about. And around Snetterton, there's a lot of medium and high-speed corners where that aerodynamics really starts to pay dividends. The Mercedes historically struggles top-end speed, but it's just generating so much lap time around those corners I alluded to. And I think that, coupled with the new spec DHF Pirelli, is seeing what we've seen, a lap record, 2 seconds potentially, that's going to get beaten today, which is absolutely incredible. And it's not the fastest conditions, the wind, but also the ambience relatively high, and that never helps a lap time. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of the Mercedes, and I think 2Cs have probably looked the most hooked up out of all of them.
Yeah, the lap record in qualifying, for what it's worth, in GT3 held by who other than Phil Keane, a 1 minute 48.498, while Williamson in FP2 did a 46.497, exactly 2 seconds underneath that lap record. So we've been seeing lap records drop left, right and centre all season long. We certainly expected that here at Snetterton, but perhaps not quite by that sort of a margin. The number 8 Mercedes, Team ABBA Racing, Richard and Sam Neary, father-son combination. They were second fastest in that second free practice session. We've seen them go well here at Snetterton in the past. It is Richard Neary, of course, in the car this time around. And Richard has been one of the standout performers in qualifying sessions amongst the AM drivers this season, hasn't he?
Definitely, and it really shows off how aggressive he is. And I think he gets the tyre turned on and he's confident to attack it. So he's starting his first flyer now. The Pirelli tyre, the fastest lap is the first flyer. So this is where everyone will be trying to get their lap done. He approaches turn 1, it's a small breakdown, couple of gears probably in the Mercedes, double apex, so he'll bring it back in for a second, try not to run onto the dust, look fairly clean, and then it's all about attacking the brakes and really V'ing off this first hairpin. So by V'ing off, he'll have 2 apexes, straighten it up, and off we go. Track limits, obviously always a contentious point. There's a few areas where you can get away with it, and the exit of turn 2 is one of them.
Yes, through here at Palm, there's another place where they may choose to run a bit wide, but Richard keeps it well within the white lines. A neat and tidy lap so far for Richard Neary. A long lap, of course, so to Joe's point, whereas at somewhere like Donington Park, for example, you might have 2 or 3 laps where the tyres are in the sweet spot. Here, because it is nearly a 2-minute lap, or 1 3/4 minutes lap, you are only going to get a little bit of time where those tyres are in the ideal operating window, and it's only a 10-minute session, so you're already limited on number of flying laps. You can see we're 3 minutes in already, with just 7 minutes to go in the session. So far, it is Morgan Tilbrook who is fastest in the first sector, 33.7 through sector 1 in the Enduro Motorsport McLaren, which won in dominant fashion last time at Donington Park. It was the second biggest winning margin in British GT history for Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton in that number 77 McLaren. The McLaren I expect to go well here as well. The mid-engine cars through that middle sector in particular do seem to be hooked up well. Richard Neary is so far, of course, as you'd expect, fastest in sector 2, but actually there are cars behind him, I think, which we are going a little bit quicker. So Neary will be the first to set a lap time, but there are others, in particular those McLarens, which look quick. Nick Halstead going well as well, Joe.
Yeah, and I think if I was looking into my crystal ball, I think the AM pole is going to be a 49.3. So it's got to be a low 49, I think, to be in the ballpark. So Richard's going to give us our first clue on that, and he goes along 49.6. So actually, I reckon I'm a bit out of mine. I think it's going to be potentially a high 48. I'm going to change my prediction on that. Morgan Tilbrook's probably the next one to give us a good indication of where it might go to. As you see, Nick Halstead now go fastest overall on a 49.2. Morgan comes over the line, just finishes. Now we get the updated time, 49.3. So Nick Halstead at the moment is the fastest guy to cross the line.
Been impressed with Nick, actually. He's really getting quicker and quicker every time he goes out onto the track in that Fox Motorsport McLaren. He then is fastest at the moment. Tilbrook second, Richard Neary third. We're yet to see a lap time for James Cottingham. Here he comes towards us in the 2Cs. Mercedes Michael Igo, by the way, now goes to provisional pole position with a 48.424, almost a second quicker than Joe's prediction. That is some lap.
That is absolutely amazing. I mean, that is right on the qualifying lap record that we had before for the AMs. And we typically see the gap between the AMs around a long lap, 1.5 to 2 seconds. So it's really alluding to it. And Cottingham's up on that as well. So he's got a really nice clear bit of track as well. So kicks up the dirt, will just get away with the track limits on there. There's a sensor, so if you don't trip that, you're okay. But he's got a great clear bit of laps, so he's going to have to keep pounding the laps out 2,000 slower than I go. That is so tight. When you think about this track, 3 miles of driving and it's 2,000 separating them.
I mean, where can you find another 2,000ths of pace? That is remarkable. He is slower than I go, but by the narrowest of margins. And James Cottingham, a weekend where really this team could do with doing pretty well, actually. The number 4 squad have had a bit of bad luck at times this season. They sit 8th in the championship, having only scored in 2 of the 4 races that we've had so far. This car, though, has scored in every race we've had so far. The number 18 Lamborghini of Michael Igo and Phil Keane, the only GT3 team, actually, to have scored points in each of the 4 races we've had up to this point, and they've not actually won one yet. I mean, this team really going for the consistent point-scoring approach. It's not necessarily the Phil Keane way, Phil Keane with more race wins than anyone else in the championship history, but consistency this year, I think, is going to be key.
Yeah, it's always a cornerstone to a championship, and every time we have a DNF, that is obviously a big fat zero on a championship hunt. They definitely haven't been spectacular yet this year, and that almost is a positive. You think they're that high in the championship, yes, and we don't really see them as one of the main protagonists as a race winner, then it's really impressive. Not quite improving his lap time like we've seen. He actually improved his first sector that lap, Igo, but then the second 2. So you get that. Obviously, the tyre doesn't know how long a lap is, so potentially it will last a lap and a half and then drop off. And hopefully for him, he can go again. Sometimes you do a cool lap that lets the pressure and the temperature of the tyre come down and gives you another opportunity to attack.
And he's got time to do that with 3 1/4 minutes still on the clock. Flick Haig here improving on her previous best lap. The second of the 2Cs Mercedes is 6th fastest at the moment. James Cottingham about to come across the line in the other car, but not going to improve his lap time. What can Flick Haig do? She needs to find 57 1,000ths of a second to jump ahead of Ian Loggy for 5th, and she does it, and she goes to pole position, does Flick Haig. That was a brilliant final sector. 73 1,000ths up now on Michael Igo. Ian Loggy getting delayed there by Betty Chen, and that's really going to lose the championship leader an awful lot of time. We've got 17 cars on a 3-mile track, Joe. It's amazing. They still managed to find each other, wanting the same bit of real estate.
Yeah, and his first 2 sectors were so fast. That sector 2 being purple, that was actually 4/10ths quicker than Flick Haig's second sector that put her on pole. So that is awful timing, and the bit that makes it even worse, the acid in the wound, is that he got such a bad X out the last corner. His next lap that he's currently on is compromised as well. It is awful qualifying when you lose that. We see Flick Haig going purple in sector 1, so she's still got more in the tank as well. So this is really lightening up, and we're seeing the Mercedes like we thought right at the front.
Which has not been the case through free practice. That has not been the quick Mercedes here today. The other 2Cs car has been quick. Team ABBA Racing have been quick. But this number 75 car, at least in the hands of Flick Haig, is absolutely flying. Look at that, 1/2 a tenth faster in sector 1 than she'd been previously. The middle sector is key, though. That's the longest, and it's another personal best. So she's already 3/4 of a tenth up on Michael Igo. It looks as though that margin might be about to increase. Igo, for what it's worth, is still putting in the odd personal best sector here or there, but can't quite hook it up into a lap time good enough to go and challenge for pole position. Cottingham still 3rd. Adam Ballon is 4th, and Mark Sansom in the big Bentley rounding out the top 5 right now. What can Haig do, though? Out of Murray's corner, a little bit wide of the apex maybe. The drag to the line begins. A purple outright fastest first sector, a personal best in the second sector. Flick Haig already on provisional pole position. Is she going to improve the lap time again? Yes, she does. A 1 minute 48.237. That is a remarkable lap time, and is underneath the existing qualifying lap record, and it puts her nearly 2/10ths in front.
Brilliant lap as well. When you're watching the car, it looks so smooth, and I've raced with Flick and worked with her for quite a few years previously, and she is so smooth, and Snetterton just suits her style so well. Probably our best UK circuit, and as a driver it's so nice when you're at your favourite circuit. You never want to admit what your favourite isn't, as we see Loggy just pipping her though by 1/2 a tenth, so he managed to hook it up. His last sector was his only green sector as well, so potentially he's got more in the bag as well. Halstead finishing his lap a green sector and a non-green, so he doesn't actually improve on that one, but the timing screens are still lighting up.
Yes, surprisingly so. We're on to the final moments of qualifying, and James Cottingham has now done a purple first sector. That lap time for Halstead stayed in 8th position, by the way. Down towards Brundle and Nelson comes the number 11 car. Graham Davidson is in this car. This is the second different McLaren that he's driven this year. Remember, he was out with Rocket RJN at the Alton Park season opener, and now he's subbing for the absent Kelvin Fletcher this weekend. But what are we going to see here? I think James Cottingham, who's just gone out of shot, is on course for pole position here, because the yellow Mercedes is faster than anybody else in Sector 1, faster than anybody else in Sector 2, and only needs to find 0.23 of a second to jump from 4th on the grid to the race 1 pole position. Look at that, he's certainly good enough at the moment, just needs to get this final corner right. It's such a tricky transition and he gets it all wrong, too late on the brakes, loses the rear of the car, and I think that might cost him pole.
Yeah, it's definitely a 10th or 2. It's a long run to the line as well, so all that time bleeding out the last corner. Is it enough? No, not even close really. Well, say not enough, it's still under a 10th, but P3 overall, that will be one that he will kick himself all night long for.
An enormous 89 thousandths of a second away from pole position, but it does jump him ahead of Michael Igoe, so 3rd place for Cottingham. He'll be a bit disappointed with that though, because the car has had so much pace this weekend, and we know that Lewis Williamson will go out into the next session in that car. He'll be gunning for pole position as well. Now, Ian Loggy already on pole position. He's improved in Sector 1. Sector 2 is not slow by any means. He comes across the line. Does he move the goalposts? No, he doesn't. A 148.5, about 4/10 off his previous best. There are still those improving though. Morgan Tilbrook, for example, is about to complete his final lap of the session, having gone personal best in Sectors 1 and 2. Betty Chen towards the back of the times is also doing the same thing, but let's see what Morgan Tilbrook can do in the car which started on pole position last time out. He's got the Mercedes in front, which is pitting. That didn't delay him, I don't think. Morgan Tilbrook then not on course for pole position here, but could well improve on 7th place in the number 77 car. He does not in the end. It's a personal best time, but it stays 7th on the grid. And remember, that car, because it won at Donington last time, has a 10-second success penalty to serve in the first race tomorrow, so that's not the ideal starting position for them. That was rather exciting, I have to say, and so close. Joe, this is the longest lap, or second longest lap, I think, of the season, and we've got the top 3 in the AM part of qualifying covered by less than a 10th. We're used to seeing this maybe in the pro session. It shows how competitive and evenly matched this AM grid is this year.
Yeah, definitely so, and I think that's going to be, I'm already excited for the race start tomorrow. 3 Mercedes, so you know they're all going to be very similar in performance, and 3 drivers all lapping within a 10th of each other. That has got fireworks written all over it. You see Loggy, he looks like he's pushing hard because he's got to get that car back as quickly as he can so the Ram guys can turn it around and get Callum McLeod installed. The fast lane is already open for that pro session, so he needs to get it back. It's a bit of a fine line. You don't want to come in so hot the brakes are on fire and smoking, but likewise you don't want to waste any time that Callum McLeod might need to find that space on track that we saw really hurt Loggy at the start of his run coming across that Century M4. So really good session from Loggy. It's probably the best qualifying I've seen from him in some time.
Well, and the fact that he set that lap time so late in the session, the exact opposite of what we predicted at the start of the qualifying session, even having been delayed by that BMW, he still was able to then on his next lap go quicker again. So qualifying 1 for GT3 is complete. We now have a provisional grid then for race number 1 tomorrow, the first 60-minute race, and it will be Ian Loggy on pole position for Ram Racing, with Flick Haig's 2C's Motorsport Mercedes second, and her teammate James Cottingham will line up third. 3 Mercedes in the top 3. Then it's the Lamborghini brigade. WPI's Michael Igoe was 4th fastest ahead of Barwell Motorsports' Adam Ballon, with the big Bentley in 6th position of Mark Sansom for Assetto Motorsport. Then it is the race-winning team from last time out at Donington, Enduro Motorsport 7th, with Nick Halstead for Fox Motorsport in 8th. The Nearies are 9th for Team ABBA Racing. Then it's the Red Line Lamborghini rounding out the top 10 ahead of the Paddock and 76 McLarens respectively. Ram Racing's second car is next, and then the rest filing through with Simon Watts and Betty Chen, the 2 slowest in the session. Now, remember though that Century Motorsport car has a new co-driver for Betty Chen in Joel Eriksson, who has DTM and Formula E race experience. Joe, I'm really interested to see how the Beamer goes in this next session, because he has been in and around the top 5 in both 3 practice sessions. Yeah,
he's the real deal. Joel, I've raced against him a few times over the years. Obviously, BMW aren't going to choose anyone to be their factory driver, so to be able to send over one of their guys and just install him and be that quick around the circuit, I don't think he's ever raced at, is seriously impressive. And the BMW is an interesting car, like the Bentley, very big front engine, almost cumbersome at slow speed, but then comes alive with the aerodynamics at a medium high speed level. and it's got a lot of waft. I've been behind that car, and it just disappears into the distance down the longer straight. So you can see what a quick turnaround that session was. It literally, as you finished out the grid order, Sam Neary was the first car out already. And like you said, we've already lost a minute of this session, and some guys aren't even starting their out lap. And I love this battle as a driver, finding your position on track. So you'd say Sam's the obvious winner because he's out front, but he would have been sat in the fast lane losing tyre temp, so it isn't all golden for him.
It was golden though for Ram Racing's Ian Loggy. Provisional pole position for race number 1, and he's in the pit lane now with Bryn.
Well, Ian, we've been scratching our heads a bit because Sector 1, Sector 2 was all right, but Sector 3 was mega, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've really been practicing on Sector 3 and managed to bring that along since the last time I was here. Found some time. A little bit disappointed I wasn't a little bit quicker than I was expecting, but obviously we've done enough to do the job, so pretty much delighted, yeah. Yeah,
lays down a marker and shows your intent for tomorrow, doesn't it? I mean, you are 15.5 points ahead in the championship and a bit between your teeth at the moment.
Yeah, it's a long way to go, so main thing is don't make mistakes. Hopefully others make them, we don't. We do a good, clean job. It's nice to be pole, especially around here, try and get away. We've got a 5-second success penalty tomorrow, so really I need to break free and try and give Callum the car in the lead plus the 5 seconds, or minus the 5 seconds. So yeah, we're in good shape, so really, really pleased.
Well, let's hope Callum can do the same for his race as well. Well done there, Ian, well done.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bryn Lucas down there with Ian Loggy, who has now handed the number 6 Mercedes over to Callum McLeod. That second seat in the number 6 car being shared between Callum McLeod and Jules Gounon over the course of the season. It's McLeod in this weekend because Jules is busy elsewhere, and interesting to see how Callum gets on alongside Ian. The pair won the Silverstone 500 together a couple of years ago for Ram Racing, so they know each other. They know they work well together. Yes, it's going to be interesting to see how that car gets on. Ian raises an interesting point there, actually, about how starting on pole position is a good thing. It sounds like a daft thing to say, but here at Snetterton, in GT3 at least, starting on the front row historically has been important. In the last 10 races here at Snetterton, the race winner has come from the top 2 on the grid 6 times. So certainly starting at the front track position is important, because although there are places to pass, Joe, they're reasonably easy to defend into most of them, and it can be tricky to follow through some of the high-speed stuff. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, firstly, your stats are unreal, really interesting, so thank you for that. And I think the interesting bit at the start at Snet is that the first 2 corners are right-handers. So if you're on the inside, you've already covered off the inside for both of those corners. So you've got a good chance of already staying in the lead. And yes, the 2 overtaking spots, turn 2 and turn 4, they're both hairpins, but you've got a long time to get the car to the inside. And love that on board as you fight under the bridge. The car wants to go right, you want to go left, and you've got to really set the car up for that tight little right into the bomb hole. Car dips in there, the Mercedes will bottom out. You can use the exit curb. There doesn't seem to be any track limit issues. And then Coram, strange corner. It's like turning right at a roundabout. It just goes on and on. And then again, you're braking and trying to keep the car flat. Last corner, don't hit the sensor on the exit. Off we go. That looked nice and tidy. That Mercedes doesn't give any layeriness. It's just very flat, very level. Looks lovely to drive around here. And 46.3, so like we thought, 2 seconds quicker than the AMs at the moment, with a little bit more in the tank, I think.
And as you'd expect, a new qualifying lap record, also comfortably the fastest lap of the weekend so far for Ulissi de Pauw, who is now in that number 15 car for the rest of the season, replacing Jamie Caroline in the number 15 car alongside John Ferguson. Here comes Phil Keane, who was the GT3 qualifying lap record holder, a lap time that he set in qualifying back in 2017 in his Barwell Motorsport days. In the last year or so, though, he's found a new home at WPI Motorsport alongside Michael Igoe, and the pair hunting around for their first championship. They sit second in the points, arriving here at Snetterton, and Phil Keane currently second in the session. Now, unlike maybe in the AM session, you would expect the pros to be able to extract the maximum from the cars pretty early on, so these first few laps should be among the fastest. Marcus Clutton certainly wringing the neck of the Enduro Motorsport McLaren through Brundle and Nelson. That looked a bit scrappy to me though, Joe.
Yeah, purple sector 1, so Marcus would have known it's a fast lap, so he's throwing the kitchen sink at that sector 2 under the bridge. Sector 2 is green, but a little bit off the ultimate fastest. Huge slide through Coram there. That's 5th gear, 130 miles an hour. Marcus is a hustler. You get some drivers that I alluded to earlier, Flick Hay, very smooth, very precise. And then you get animals like Marcus Clutton, which get it by the ring in its neck, and they absolutely get the most out of it. P2, really good start. P3, Adam bopped him just there by a tenth. Again, we're seeing very, very tight times, kicking up the dust. It's quite a nice move that. Doesn't lose you any time, but the guy behind definitely is slightly compromised.
Yeah, visibility through that dust is not ideal. So it's Ulysses de Pauw fastest at the moment, but he's going quicker on this lap. Look at that, 3/10 quicker. This could be into the 1:45s if he pulls this off. Ulysses de Pauw comes across the line at 45.858, is over half a second quicker than Johnny Adam, who is no slouch, let's be honest, who is second fastest in the session. Sandy Mitchell third for Barwell, Marcus Clutton fourth for Enduro, Phil Keane is fifth for WPI, and Ewan Hankey in the 76 McLaren was sixth, but now drops down a place because Lewis Williamson gets himself onto the front row. 146.163 is about 3/10 quicker than he has been so far this weekend, but it's still 3/10 off pole.
I know, that lap from de Pauw, without sounding like a UKIP MP, like these foreigners coming over here and taking our pole positions, but that is unbelievable. We're seeing small gaps in the AMs, and you expect smaller gaps in the pros, but 3/10 to a driver of Williamson's caliber in the same Mercedes GT3 is absolutely unreal. Clutton is on 2 greens. He loves using that curb under the bridge there. I've not ever been brave enough to kick up the dust there. The car's so loaded. The positive of cutting the corner is you're going a shorter distance, so if the car is unsettled, at least you've outweighed it by going that shorter distance, and thus your lap time should be a bit faster. Love that shot from that little bit high. You really see the car working. Nice flat car on the way in, legal on the way out. This could be an improvement for Clutton, but he's nearly 6-7 tenths off pole position. That is a big old gap to find.
He's matched de Pauw in the first sector. This should be an improvement. It's actually not really. He stays in 6th place, finds a 10th, but that still doesn't move him any further up the order. McLeod has improved again in 2nd place, moving ahead of Williamson. So Callum McLeod in the car, which will start on pole for race 1, is now onto the front row for the race 2 grid as well. Sandy Mitchell then gets dropped down into 5th, and he's very close, isn't he, behind Johnny Adams' Mercedes in some forms of racing. A nice little slipstream around here wouldn't be a bad thing, but I think he might be a bit too close to the Mercedes to really be setting really good lap times. It's been a purple first sector on this next lap for de Pauw, by the way, but his middle sector wasn't all that good, nor was the final sector, so no further improvement for him. What can Callum McLeod do, though? He's green in sector 1.
Yeah, and he had a huge slide coming onto the back straight. Camera picked up lovely, maybe even hit the track limit sensor, so we'll keep an eye out for that. It'll be car number 67 looking on the timing screen. Middle sector is good, not his fastest, but only 100th off. There's so much time to be found in this last corner, just chucking it in and hoping it sticks. All the grips on the inside, you could hear the splitter kissing the floor there, so you know the car's loaded. We're going to see a slide like we saw from Loggy. No, looks clean. Potentially a little bit too slow, got the apex curb too easily in my opinion, so maybe he was concentrating on not messing it up and messed it up in a different way. Coming across the line, can he beat a 45.8? No, 46.0, sorry, so 2.5 tenths basically off pole position.
Yeah, so he found a small amount, but maybe that little mistake you noticed out of Williams onto the back straight just compromised him slightly. And the trouble is he's now onto his final lap of the session, and the tyres, you would imagine, are past their best by this stage. And a couple of improvements further back down the order, by the way. Sam Neary up to 12th, Bill Tregurtha 13th. Tregurtha not really extracting the same pace from the Bentley, interestingly, that his AM teammate Mark Sanson was doing in the earlier session. But that car, as you'd expect, performing very well in the speed traps. Big mistake there from McLeod down into Agostini, just asking a little bit too much of the brakes on the Mercedes. Runs out wide, and that now, you would imagine, is his final lap pretty much scuppered.
Yeah, we see Tregurtha, as you just alluded to, his purple speed traps, did find a bit of time up to P10 now. That's really the only movement in the pack, isn't it? That sort of sub-10th position downwards. There's a few green sectors, but the checker flag is going to be out in under 20 seconds from now. So I think that pretty much is everyone done. So we're seeing a Mercedes 1, 2, 3, 4. As we do see a move. I think, was that a track limit deletion from McLeod, or was it an improvement, sorry, from Williamson?
I think it was. He went green in the final sector, and his first 2 sectors weren't far off his previous best. So yeah, Lewis Williamson now only just over a 10th slower than Ulysses de Pauw, who has pitted. So de Pauw isn't going to improve again, whereas Williamson did get through in time to start one more lap. We'll wait and see whether the Pirelli rubber is up to another lap here. Certainly they're capable of doing the laps, these tyres, but that initial window where you can really get down to the quick qualifying laps is just a bit smaller this year. There is Lewis Williamson, who I think actually would be a bit disappointed if he came out of this session without pole position. He's been the driver on everyone's mind so far today through his free practice times. Now, admittedly, that's on old rubber. You never quite know what everyone's doing in those sessions, but when you've topped both free practice sessions, Joe, you must go into qualifying feeling like pole position is yours for the taking.
Yeah, and anything less, unfortunately, does feel like you've lost out massively there, and it doesn't look like he's pushing. I think he's backed off already. He's going to box this lap, but it is only 1/10 of a second. It's so easy to say, he must be so annoyed he's not first, but 1/10 of a second, that's literally breaking 5 meters later into one corner around this Snetterton 300 configuration. So it's tight again, and yeah, for me, the Mercedes element of, we saw 1, 2, 3 in the AM session, and actually the only Mercedes that wasn't at the front in the hands of Ferguson is now on pole position. So that's really going to be a joker in the pack, I think, over the 2-hour sprint races that we see tomorrow.
It's interesting, though, that the only time a Mercedes has won here in the last 10 races was our most recent race when Loggie and Berman won here for Ram Racing. Beyond that, if it was a front-engine car doing well here at Snetterton in GT3, it was always an Aston Martin, not a Mercedes. We don't have any GT3 Astons this season, so the door very much open for the Mercedes in that respect. But yeah, interesting to see them dominating again. 1, 2, 3 in that session, much as they were in the earlier one. 1, 2, 3, 4, in fact, yes, because Johnny Adam has also got onto the second row. So 3 Mercedes at the front of the grid for race 1 and 4 at the front of the grid for race number 2. So, Ulisses de Pauw, fastest in Q2 for GT3. That will be his first British GT pole position, and just the way that he wants to thank the team for giving him the drive for the rest of the season. So, it will be the 2C's number 15 car on pole with the number 4 car alongside, the Ram Racing car alongside 2C's at the front of the grid. Then it is Callum McLeod in the championship leading Ram Racing car third, ahead of the Johnny Adam machine, which Flick Haig qualified so well in session 1. Then, again inside the top 5, we've got the Barwell Motorsport number 72 with Sandy Mitchell qualifying 5th, ahead of Marcus Clutton for Enduro Motorsport in 6th. Phil Keane only 7th this time. WPI starting midfield then for race number 2, ahead of Ewan Hankey, who rounds out a consistent pair of qualifying sessions for the 76 team. Then it's the Proctors in 9th, Will Tregurtha 10th in the Big Bentley, ahead of James Dorlin in the Red Line Lamborghini, which again doesn't seem to quite have the pace so far, at least this weekend. Sam Neary is 12th, Scott Mulvern for Team Parker Racing is 13th. That car was better in practice, surprised to see it that far down the order. Fox Motorsport 14th, and Century's BMW is 15th place. So Joel Eriksson perhaps still getting fully warmed up to that car towards the back of the field, which is rounded out by Martin Plowman for Paddock Motorsport and James Kell in the Rocket RJN McLaren, a pair of those 720Ss at the back of the field. So that provisionally then is how your GT3 grid will line up for race number 2, and as we expected, Mercedes very much to the fore. That is not, though, qualifying done with here at Snetterton. We've got 2 more sessions to go. The GT4 cars will be heading out very shortly. We've spoken a lot, Joe, about GT3 and about the Mercedes going quickly there. In GT4, though, it's been a little bit more complicated. Team Parker Racing looked quick in the first free practice session, but then Paddock Motorsport were quick in FP2, and historically this has always been a McLaren track in GT4.
Yeah, definitely. Even more so when I was in one, obviously. But no, it suits the car very well. Lots of torque out the slow speed stuff. It is obviously now announced that we're replacing the 570 with an Artura. So the 570 naturally is kind of getting to the end of its life cycle. And that's what we're really seeing in the new generation of GT4s. The BMW's on show and the Porsche just leaving the pit lane now are really just moving the game on. But in qualifying, once you've got that new tyre on, it kind of can mask a few of the frailties of the car, be it BOP, be it handling, be it the nature of the car. So I think it's pretty open. This one's going to be really hard to call. I think the Porsches seem to have been a bit of the dark horse this weekend, but that Mustang just always looks sorted as well. I don't think you can ever rule that one out in any circumstance.
No, certainly not. We've had a Ford Mustang on the pole position here back in 2019. That was the Multimatic car, but of course we did see the Ford winning our most recent race here at Snetterton. Academy Motorsports, Matt Cowley and Will Moore taking the victory in the wet here 12 months ago. Right, Ulisses de Pauw has just claimed his first British GT pole position, and Bryn Lucas is with him now to find out how he feels about that.
Top 4 cars from that qualifying are all the same car, the Mercedes-AMG GT3, and you're the top one there. So, you know, it's going to be a tough one tomorrow with 4 of the same car ahead of the pack.
Yeah, obviously we can all see that the Mercedes are pretty strong this weekend, but it looks like we did the best of them. It feels very good. First British GT pole. Being a silver and being on the overall pole it feels pretty good, but huge thanks to the team. We worked very hard during these past 2 days to find a good setup, and it looks like we found something pretty good, so thanks to them, and I hope I can deliver again tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure you're going to be, you know, on top form when we come to the race tomorrow, but well done there, pole position.
Thank you very much.
Ulysses de Pauw there then on pole position provisionally for race number 2 for the Intelligent Money British GT Championship here in the GT3 element at least at Snetterton. GT4 qualifying 1 now getting underway, and drivers trying to find that bit of clean air, trying to get the heat into the Pirelli rubber. The first car out of the pit lane was the BMW number 90 in the hands of Jack Brown, and this car which, I mean, SRO Motorsports dominated GT4 a year ago, and this year they're having it a little bit more difficult. The number 90 car has yet to win a race. It's had 2 podium finishes though, and does sit 4th in the points, and only 13.5 points off the championship leading Audi of Richard Williams and Senan Fielding. They've gone well here at Snetterton in the past, and they will of course be without a success penalty, will the Audi pairing this weekend. So too actually will Matt Topham and Darren Turner in their 2nd place in the championship. Aston Martin, the BMW then makes its way out of the Wilson hairpin, and will be followed fairly closely by a few of those quick cars. I mentioned Paddock Motorsport went well in practice. McLaren with their 570S have actually won at least 1 race here at Snetterton in the last 6 years since the car debuted in the championship, and 3 of those wins actually in the last 3 years have gone to Jordan Collard, who we'll see out in the 2nd qualifying session later on. So it does seem to be a McLaren circuit, but GT4 this year, Joe, has been more wide open, I think, than I've ever seen it, certainly in recent years.
Yeah, and I think that's really down to the manufacturers taking it more and more seriously, more of them coming in, but more of them putting a lot more time into development of these cars. And it's always so hard to talk about GT4 as like a smaller, younger sibling to GT3. Yes, it's slower, but it's not easier. And when you're watching this BMW especially, you can see the car rolling into the corners because it is heavier, it is more like a road car. But as a driver, that's harder to extract than a lovely setup GT3. So you'll see the car pitch on the brakes, the front goes down, and then round the left-hander, you'll really see that front load up, and that as a driver gives you a bit of a feeling of motion, and it's quite hard then to catch the slides. They suddenly seem a hell of a lot snappier, as you see the Porsche also kind of getting a bit of a wallow over some of these curbs. Ross Wiley attacking the bomb hole there, let it run wide and then get into Coram. It's looking pretty tight sector-wise. Everyone's got a purple sector on this first lap. Too early to call who's going to be at the sharp end for me.
Well, Ross was fastest in the middle sector. He's been beaten now by Josh Miller in the Racing Aston Martin. In Sector 1, it is Matt Cowley who is faster than anybody so far in that Academy Ford Mustang. Jack Brown goes through then, sets the benchmark at 159.52. Is that going to be beaten by Ross Wiley? Yes, it is, comfortably. A 57.627 then is the lap time that Ross Wiley sets. The qualifying lap record then has already been beaten in GT4. It was a 158.125 set a couple of years ago by Scott Mulvin. We're now into the 56s, Joe.
Absolutely. It's like 2 seconds. It's so hard sometimes if you haven't been fortunate enough to go around a circuit, either real life or simulator, but 2 seconds is light years, absolutely light years. When you see a Formula 1 team struggling and then maybe a second off, well, we're doubling that with the GT cars. Absolutely unreal. There's quite a lot of cars running close to each other there going into turn 2 as we cut to the stellar Audi. Richard Williams there, he's kind of been this super bronze for so many years, and now he's a silver. He's still fast for a silver, even though it matches his hair as it starts to match his driver grading. And he's got 2 green sectors, fast in Sector 1, a couple of tenths down in 2. But as we've seen, Sector 3 really seems to be the sector where it can make or break your lap. And I think it's really down to the nature of Coram being such a long, fast corner. It's easy to suddenly lose 2 or 3 tenths in just this corner where Richard is currently.
Richard and Senan were winners here at Snetterton back in 2019, started 2nd on the grid for that race, and a big wobble going into the final corner at Murray's. That will definitely have lost him some time. The time to beat now, by the way, is a 155.909. That's set by Matt Cowley in the Academy Ford Mustang, over half a second quicker than Tom Edgar in Toyota. Where does Williams slot in? 6th place for Richard Williams then, so not at the very sharp end of the grid. Matt Topham is going quickly, purple in the first sector. Sorry, no, excuse me, that is actually Ashley Marshall, purple in the first sector with a 36.3, so the number 26 McLaren is going well. Pole position in GT4 though slightly less significant. In fact, it's been 13 races here at Snetterton since GT4 was won from pole position. You can start well down the order in GT4 and make your way through the field.
You must have eaten a British GT record book for all these stats. Are absolutely unreal. See Josh Miller finishing his lap. Can he improve on his previous one? Ooh. He does, but stays 2nd position, just over 3 tenths of a second off pole. The GT4s do seem to get another few laps on the tyres before they drop as well, so he's potentially there as we go to Ashley Marshall. Like you said, purple sector 1, green sector 2, a couple of tenths off, so sector 3 is this important sector. Get the car at the bomb hole. Yes, use all the curb, unwind the lock, get it into the inside. Really dusty around here at Snetterton. The soil really gets brought onto the circuit, so the grip is tighter than that. You can see the car starting to squirm, ABS working hard. That looked really clean, that looked really precise. So he's going to get a good run out. Can he be in the 55s or at least a low 56? Going to cross the line. Now what have we got? We got a 56.5, takes him up to P4. Not bad, 6/10 off pole position.
He did a 56.5 in practice though, and you'd imagine that was an older rubber. Very few of the teams tend to run new tyres in pre-practice, so interesting actually that car is not going quite as quickly at the moment. Matt Cowley meanwhile has improved again at the front, and the car which won in GT4 last time at Donington Park is half a second up the road. Now normally, Joe, we would say that winning at the race before we go into these 60-minute double headers is not a good thing, because it's hard to overcome that success penalty in such a short race. This car has an extra 10 seconds to serve in the pit lane tomorrow. If you're half a second quicker a lap than everyone else though, suddenly that seems like slightly less of an obstacle.
Well, you only need 20 laps, right, to overcome your penalty. But yeah, they've done really well. You can actually just touch the white line and a bit of the dirt under braking. The car had a little squirm, but yeah, those guys have got the thing hooked up as we cut to the Team Parker Porsche now of Jamie Orton, currently in P6. That's a good qualifying from Jamie so far, and he's still improving. So that Porsche, I think, has had a bit of a break this weekend, and we're seeing them a lot more competitive than potentially we have at previous race weekends.
Yeah, the highest of the Porsches in the championship is Ross Wiley, 5th in the standings. So yes, if the cars are a bit faster this weekend, that's going to help his hopes of scoring some good points. Jamie Orton with a big twitch as he walloped to that curb through Murray's corner. This looks like being a personal best lap for Jamie Orton. He's 6th at the moment, comes across the finish line and actually doesn't improve in the end. That final sector got away from him rather, so he stays on the outside of row number 2. Just over a minute to go though, so he's got time for one more lap. There is a big screech of tyres going into Rich's corner. Do we have yellow flags at Rich's corner? Yes we do, because Matt Topham has had a big moment. That is not, I would imagine, Joe, a nice place to lose control. It's a fast old entry to that corner, isn't it?
Yeah, that must have been early on as well to the entry, because he hasn't gone that far off the circuit. So for how long the screech went, I was like a meerkat then. I sat up trying to spot it in vain. The problem there is that it's going to definitely have flat spotted the tyres to some degree, and normally the teams have the strategy where they will be racing on it. Matt's done a really good job of there, getting out of the way of Ashley Marshall and that McLaren. It's easy once you've had a big moment like that to get flustered and compound a mistake with another one, but he's not going to have time for another lap anyway, so he might as well go in. But yeah, for me, he's either touched a little bit of the grass on the way in, like we saw the Mustang do on another corner, or he's just carried a bit too much in and the rears come round as we go on board. You can see that looks like a bit of a cool down lap for one of the BMWs there, I think it is.
It is one of the Century BMWs. It's Chris Salkeld, who is, yes, well off the pace on this lap. Salkeld down in 9th place at the moment, and for a man who was regularly challenging for race victories last year, that's going to be a little bit disappointing, but maybe they'll be able to turn things around in the races come tomorrow. What have you spotted?
Yeah, just the Ginetta up at P4, actually. That's a strong showing for that car. Again, seen some maybe bop issues, team issues, setup-wise, I mean, on that regard for the Ginetta. So the Ginetta and the Porsches definitely seem to be going well around Snetterton so far.
And Ginetta claimed its most recent pole position in the championship here a year ago with Charlie Robertson in race 2. So we know the G56 goes well. That was, I think, the first pole position, maybe the second pole position for the G56. But anyway, we know that this is a circuit which suits that newer Ginetta. So fastest in the session looks to be Matt Cowley. He has bailed for the pit lane already. So too has Josh Miller in the 23 Aston Martin, second fastest. Tom Edgar is 3rd in the total, but not improving. We have had a personal best first sector, though, for Freddie Tomlinson, and right on cue, there is the Ginetta. Now, historically, Joe, the Ginettas have not always excelled in a straight line, but it's such a agile car that's got to be good, particularly through that middle sector here.
Yeah, I mean, you can see from the outside it's a very different silhouette to a normal road car. Ginetta really pioneered the GT4 class early days and provided a lot of support to SRO in building GT4s, but unfortunately the success of GT4 has kind of left Ginetta behind a little bit in that regard, hence why they've had to come out the G56. So yeah, that car generates all of its lap time in the corners, and then when you're sat in it, and I've raced it and I love the car, on the straights they're all way too long, unfortunately. But Freddie Tomlinson has done a mega job there, and they've got a good chance tomorrow at getting a pretty competitive result, I'd hope.
And he sensibly realised he wasn't going to improve on that lap time, so bailed for the pits. Otherwise, it's another 2 minutes to do an in-lap before they can get that driver change done. And as we've seen, they don't hang around here in British GT between these qualifying sessions. We get one driver in, one driver out, one driver in, and send them back on their way again as quickly as possible. See Newbridge there looking at the Aston Martin, which did have that spin at Rich's corner. They'll just be checking it over, make sure there is no damage, changing the tyres. I guess they'll have to, because as Joe said, there is a high likelihood they've been flat spotted with that spin for Matt Topham. So, for race number 1 here at Snetterton in GT4, well, it's kind of as we saw at Donington Park, from a pole position to a win at Donington and back on pole again here at Snetterton for Matt Cowley in the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang. The R-Racing Aston Martin of Josh Miller will line up alongside him, a 10th nearly between them at the end of the session. It's then a big gap back, isn't it? Half a second or so back to Tom Edgar, who is 3rd in the Toyota, Freddie Tomlinson, who's 4th in the Ginetta, and Ross Wiley, who is 5th in the Porsche. And then, do you know what? Let's throw a McLaren in the mix as well. Ashley Marshall 6th. 6 different makes of car in the top 3 rows in GT4. It doesn't get a lot better than that. Jamie Orton then is the 2nd of the Porsches. He is 7th fastest. Then the 2 Century Motorsport BMWs. Jack Brown in 8th and Chris Solkeld in 9th, with Richard Williams surprisingly far down the order there. The championship leading GT4 squad with work to do in that first race tomorrow. Thankfully, they don't have a success penalty to overcome. The same is true of Newbridge, who are also further down than you'd expect there. The spin not helping Matt Topham, of course. He's 11th. Team Brit are 12th place, and Motor1 Racing, who had some mechanical issues in practice, round out the 13 GT4 cars here this weekend. So it's Ford Mustang once again on the top. This is a familiar story in 2022, isn't it, Bryn?
Matt, that was pretty impressive. You know, you won last time, so you've got the most success penalty to overcome, but it's looking strong, looking solid from here.
Yeah, definitely. Grabbing P1 in that session helps a lot. So, yeah, looking to the race, obviously, we put ourselves in the strongest position we can do, given we have a 10-second penalty. So, yeah, just see what Marco can do in this next session, but we know he can pull a time out, we know he's quick. So, yeah, we look forward to tomorrow and how the races.
Are you focused on both the races at this stage, or is your mind purely on that first race, get that one done?
Still focused on both the races, obviously, because looking to it, most likely we're going to struggle to finish on the podium in the first one with the 10-second penalty. So the second one's our strongest chance to get back on the podium and get some bigger points. So really looking at it, the first one's damage limitation, so putting ourselves in P1 really helps with that.
Played a long game, well done.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Bryn Lucas with Matt Cowley. And here we go again. One more qualifying session to go, and they've all been really competitive so far, actually, GT3 and GT4. And now it is time for the second GT4 session. Now, GT4 has far fewer Pro-Am entries. So whilst it was the Am drivers in those Pro-Am cars out in the first session, the bulk of them are silver-silver driver combos. So it's typically, Joe, the faster of the silver drivers, although they're very often very evenly matched, but the faster of the silver drivers now going up against the out-and-out pros. So this, in the past, has kind of become the Darren Turner session, hasn't it? Because we always expect good things from Darren, but there are some seriously quick silver-graded drivers who will give him a run for his money.
Yeah, and they are the fastest silvers. There is a rule in British GT of whichever silver has been fastest in the free practices has to do this Q2 session. So it definitely is the cream of the crop out there. Of course, all the slower drivers in Q1 will say, well, the teammate had the better tyres and the lower fuel. But yeah, it's definitely going to be there. And we have seen that Topham Turner car so competitive. They were given extra weight at Donington to kind of align them to the silver weight penalty. So it'll be interesting to see how much they've still got, and will they still be carrying it here? I will find that out for tomorrow's race, of course. But they've been very, very quick all year.
25 kilos still on board that car, I can confirm. There's a piece of paper which I've got in front of me which confirms that. So yes, they are still carrying that 25 kilos. They don't, though, have to serve the extra 14 seconds in the pit lane that the Silver Cup cars do in the races tomorrow. We'll cover that tomorrow in the build-up to the first race, but the Aston is running heavier once again here this weekend. The race, by the way, the first of 2 races tomorrow begins at 11:15 here UK time. The second one just after 4 o'clock, and we have live coverage tomorrow on Sky Sports F1 as well. So if you can't make it here to Snetterton tomorrow, you'll be well served. You can sit down in the comfort of your own home and watch us on the telly, and that's a really, really exciting addition to the 2022 Intelligent Money British GT campaign. So, Ford Mustang on top in session 1. Marco Senoretti, though, interestingly, the quicker of the two drivers in that car in practice. He's been getting quicker as the season's gone on, Marco. The Canadian driver, relatively little racing experience. I mean, he's raced Nissan Micras in Canada. How much of that he's been able to bring over to the Mustang, I'm not too sure. Chances of a double pole, do you think, maybe?
Pretty strong with the gap that Cowley proved to have over the rest of the competition there. He's got great track position, we can see in front, so it'll all be about hooking up this last corner and getting a good run across the line to start his lap. Great view of that bank there where you can watch from the last corner. Like you said, if you can't get here tomorrow, then watch on TV, or you could do the best and come here, watch it live with watching it on your phone at the same time. And you just get such a real appreciation of how much the cars move around in person as it goes into turn 1. That body roll that I was saying the GT4s have, pitches it in, keeps it on the track nice and clean. Don't miss your braking point. You want to go in deep to this corner, but you don't want to go too far. Hooks it up nicely, unwinds the steering lock, can hear that V8 purr out of the corner, and off he goes. He's got such a clear lap as well. He can be fully fixated on just hitting his marks, hook up the apex curb. You tend to find when you hit an apex curb like that, it actually gets rid of a bit of understeer. It kind of loads up the loaded side even more and gets the car on rails right up on the white line, lovely into another hairpin. Turn 4 again, straighten the car up and go. Nice and wide there. Illegal to track limit what rules, but doesn't seem to be policed, so let's hope he gets away with it. Into Hamilton, very fast left, but then straight hard on the brakes into Oggies. Again, you can really hook the apex curve up here, unwind the lock. You can see all the rubber that's been laid down there over the course of the last 2 days. Into the right hand, onto the back straight. Such an important run now, all the way down. This straight goes on forever and ever. The drivers be fixated at their delta time, seeing if they're gaining or losing as they come under the bridge. Quite a few bumps here in the brake zone. You can just see those little ripples. That just sets the car off. ABS working even harder. Took it into the right. Don't really want to hit that big sausage curve, which he doesn't. It's looking like an absolutely brilliant lap so far. I almost want to stop talking and not curse him anymore.
He's actually not going quite as quickly, though, as Jamie Day in the R-Racing Aston Martin, or Matty Graham, actually, in the Beluga Porsche. So the Ford Mustang looking good, but there are cars further down the road which are going a little bit quicker. Senoretti, though, will be the driver who sets the first lap time of this 4th and final qualifying session in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship here at Snetterton. Let's see what that lap time is going to be. Senoretti brings the Academy car across the line, and it's 1:56.224. It's good, but we have seen 55s, of course, out of the drivers in session 1. I'm sure we'll see the same again here. Graham goes second, but Day goes first at 1:56.162. So that car there, the Aston Martin, is provisionally the fastest in the session. Josh Miller and Jamie Day looking to try and become the youngest ever driver combination to win a race in the British GT Championship on combined age, that is. They are both ridiculously young, still teenagers, and they are looking pretty rapid here this weekend.
Yeah, I actually dislike how young they are. It makes me feel like I'm pretty close to death, let alone retirement with my age. But it's really interesting seeing a front engine dominance here, aren't we? Saw it in GT3 with the Mercedes, and now we're seeing it in GT4 with the Mustang and this Aston Martin. And again, everyone has managed to get a few more laps out of these tyres than the GT3s were. Day has gone green. Burns has got up to P2 in the BMW, another front engine car, to support my random theory. And Senoretti's actually done a purple Sector 1 now, so 36-1. It's only a 10th between all their Sector 1s, but it's tight. Senan Fielding as well now starting to get going. He came out a lap later, so this is his first flyer. And what we're seeing from his sectors at the moment are pretty competitive. He's definitely going to be within 3 or 4 tenths one way or the other of that pole position.
Yeah, less than a tenth slower than Senoretti in Sector 1. In fact, Fielding did have the fastest first sector until Marco went and beat it. Marco's second sector, though, interestingly, a few tenths of a second off the pace. so perhaps that's not going to be another improvement for him. Senna Fielding, though, comes out of Murray's corner. We've seen SRO Motorsport do this a few times where they don't rush to get Senna out there. They're confident enough in his abilities that he's going to be able to get the lap time in at some point. He comes across the line and goes second, 11 1/1000ths of a second slower than the R-Racing Aston Martin, which now turns its way into the final corner. Jamie Day is going quicker again, though. Green in both sectors 1 and 2. Will Burns has just jumped into 3rd position in the number 90 BMW, so Senoretti is down to 4th. What can Jamie Day do, though? This should be a 55. It is a 55, a 155.773, 3 and a bit tenths up now on Matty Graham, who jumps onto the front row.
Yeah, and then he gets bumped down by Burns literally as it came out of your mouth. So these cars are really coming to light, and up until Day doing that lap time, it was actually the top 7 covered by 0.2 of a second. So I think this has got some legs on it as a battle. And we're even seeing the Ginetta of Joe Wheeler up there, P5, P6 now, and he's doing green sectors. So this battle isn't done yet with only just over 3 minutes remaining on the clock.
So Aston Martin from BMW, from Porsche, from Audi, from Ford Mustang, from Ginetta at the moment is the top 6 on the grid, continuing this fantastically competitive season we're having in British GT4. There is the number 90 car then, Will Burns, the reigning British GT4 champion, who was so dominant last year, winning so many races, and he is currently second fastest, albeit 0.3 off pole position, but it is so tight behind. In fact, yeah, you've just spotted, Joe, we've even got Joe Wheeler and Darren Turner exactly the same lap times. I'll tell you what, you'd have told Joe Wheeler at the start of the season that he would at some point this year be matching Darren Turner on qualifying pace. I think he'd have taken that.
What about asking Darren Turner, would he accept doing the same time as Joe Wheeler as he turns a wheel, I guess? And that is, yeah, absolutely unreal. And the rule, just in case anyone's interested, which I'm sure you're not, if you do the same lap time, it's whoever did it first is in front. Ooh. So that is a save and a half from Joe Wheeler there. So I think you got the news that he's just done the same time as Darren Turner. He got a bit overexcited.
Yes, that was quite the save, that wasn't it, from Joe Wheeler in the Ginetta. He was purple in the middle sector, so faster than anybody else. Again, that's that middle sector, the infield section that he's entering into now, with all of those tight corners, the changes of direction. That is where this Ginetta G56 seems to excel. Right, who's improving? No one, actually, at the moment is the answer. Certainly not at the very front of the field. Josh Day then, nearly 0.3 up on Will Burns, who is 4 100ths quicker than Matty Graham, who is 6 100ths quicker than Senna Fielding. He's half a tenth up on Senoretti, who's got a similar margin over Wheeler and Turner, who are on identical lap times. And yeah, from second all the way through to 10th, there are no 2 positions which have been separated at the moment by more than about half a tenth or so. It's extremely tight, but we are seeing fewer and fewer improvements. And in fact, with a minute and a half left, the top 3 have all bailed for the pit lane. When they turn up red on that timing tower on your screen, that means they're in the pits. And at this stage of the session, that means they're already starting their driver change. Or in fact, this is the end of the session, so it means we're not going to see them back out on track again.
Yeah, they've given up and they're saving those tyres for another day, effectively. Darren Turner up to P4 now, so unfortunately we don't have anyone on the same time, but that is so tight. And when it's that tight, it's interesting, but then you look for a big gap, and the big gap is Day to Burns, P1 to P2, which really alludes to what a good job they've done at R-Racing, and Day has done to get that. That's the biggest gap in the field, pretty much, apart from 10th to 11th.
Yeah, it is insanely tight, isn't it? Joe Wheeler persevering with this lap, despite the moment that he had at the beginning of it, and yeah, doesn't bail for the pit lane. So in a way, putting unnecessary mileage on the Pirelli tyres, really, but I suppose he wanted to see if he could still improve, and the answer to that question is absolutely not. A 1 minute 59.1 is some 3 seconds nearly off his previous best pace. There goes Senna Fielding. Now, he has just done a personal best in the first sector. He was a 10th down, though, in sector 1. This could still be an improvement on 5th place. Remember, another 10th would get him onto the front row here, so so tightly bunched is this GT4 field. Fielding comes across the line and does go onto the front row, so worth sticking it out there for Fielding. Remember, he joined the circuit late, and that means at the end of the session, as others are pitting and the track is clearer, his tyres are still capable of lapping well. It's still a 1/4 of a second off pole, but it does move him now into second place.
Yeah, it just gets him on the front row, and it's so nice when you get to start in the front row and you've just got clear real estate at you. Obviously, pole is better, but second, you can still be aggressive at the start, and obviously that'd be at the back of the GT3 field, but there's normally enough space for them to have their own proper start and battle it out into turn 2, especially here, the first big break of the lap. But I think that might be done for improvements. We've got half the field in the pit lane. It really is only really Joe Wheeler that was doing anything, and even that sort of lap has fallen by the wayside, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we're likely to see that many more improvements. Seb Hopkins did just improve, though, into 4th position, which actually puts him ahead of Matty Graham. So the Team Parker Racing Porsche ahead, then, of the Voluga Racing Porsche in the little battle they were having on for 4th position. Hopkins 4th, Graham 5th, and Darren Turner, interestingly, down in 6th. So that would suggest, would it not, Joe, that that extra weight is just making the difference. He's within 0.4 of a second of pole, but 25 kilos has got to lose you at least 0.4 around here, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly the number I'd guess around here. 25 kilos, GT4 having sort of 400-ish horsepower, weighing 1,300 kilos. It's just enough just to start to edge it off. On the brakes predominantly here, with the big brake zones just being extended by that. And Joe Wheeler really is pounding the laps round today, isn't he? I mean, he's won the qualifying race for the most amount of laps, but the positive of the Ginetta, it is the lightest car, so it will wear its tyres the least. But yeah, interesting qualifying, and that is going to be a mega race. Race 2 start in GT4 is going to be as electric as the race 1 start, I think, for the GT3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, GT3 naturally steals some of the headlines, but this year especially, I've been so impressed with the GT4 championship battle. The point situation is incredibly open, with at least 5 or 6 teams with a realistic shot at this halfway point of the season of challenging for the title come the end of the year. And as we've documented, so many different makes of car capable of running at the front. We've got an Aston Martin on pole for race 2 at Snetterton, with Josh Day setting the fastest time of 1:55.773, a quarter of a second up on the Audi of Sen and Fielding, then the BMW of Will Burns, and then the Porsche of Seb Hopkins. 4 different makes this time across the top 2 rows. Matty Graham spoils that pattern slightly with a 5th place qualifying session for Voluga Racing. Then it's Darren Turner's Aston Martin 6th. Marco Signoretti only 7th in the end in the Academy Ford Mustang, which will start from pole in race 1 in the hands of Matt Cowley. Then it's the Ginetta of Joe Wheeler. Mo Ritson has been quick this weekend in the Paddock Motorsport McLaren, but only 9th for him, ahead of the Toyota Gazoo Racing car in 10th. Century Motorsports' 2nd BMW, the number 9 car, is 11th ahead of Motorsport Racing, and the Team Brit McLaren at the back of the field. But the whole field covered by just 1.6 seconds. Actually, the first half a second takes you through about 3/4 of that very competitive GT4 grid. So 4 very entertaining qualifying sessions today, 2 equally entertaining 60-minute races coming up tomorrow, Joe, and certainly no point trying to predict GT4. That's far too tight. Within GT3, yes, Mercedes seem to have the edge, but I think we are in for 2 really intriguing races tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the pit stops here at Snetterton are so spicy. It's such a tight pit lane. It's always a fight. So if there were a safety car, everyone boxes, and then all bets are off, really, who can get out quick and first. And it is still tight. Yes, the Mercedes has dominated qualifying, but they're not light years ahead. Some of those other teams might have compromised setup, looking for a race performance over that 1 lap quali pace potentially too. So loads of factors that are going to definitely spice up both of tomorrow's races.
And as I said, we're at the halfway point of the championship now, so points really starting to become significant. Right now, though, all that matters is that Jamie Day is our fastest driver in qualifying session 2 for GT4, and Bryn can now catch up with him.
It was all smiles back there. Now, look, you look so serious. Well done. I mean, pole position, your season so far, the 2 of you, has been pretty good, hasn't it?
Yeah, it started off really well at the first round, having our first podium. Obviously, it's been a bit rocky since then, having some highlights at Donington showing good pace. Obviously, the result didn't come, but finally to get a pole position means a lot to us, and it's just a good start to the weekend overall.
Did you have a feeling when you went into this qualifier that you could be on pole at the end?
Yeah, definitely. We showed pace, both me and Josh, all weekend, that we're fast enough to be at the front, and just pieced it together in that qualifying, just getting everything perfect, and yeah, came out on top and really happy for it.
The scenes behind there were, you know, jubilant, ecstatic, I'd say. What's it mean to the team then to get your first pole position in the British GT, you know, for this season, but you two as well?
Yeah, it means a lot. Obviously, we've been working very hard from the start of the year, both of us being 16, youngest on the grid. It means a lot to be the youngest now as well, and for the team overall, they're just all happy. Just the work we put into this weekend, a lot of testing, a lot of trying everything just to put it all together, it just means a lot to everyone.
Yeah, well, your age sickens us all, but well done. That was really well done there. Great one, James.
Thank you very much.
I could not agree more with everything that Bryn Lucas just said, but in particular, what an impressive performance that was for the R Racing squad. And Jamie Day, at 16 years old, on pole position for our second race here at Snetterton, the midpoint of the 2022 Intelligent Money British GT season. An exciting set of qualifying sessions here today on the Snetterton 300 circuit, which began with the Race 1 qualifying sessions in GT3. It was Mercedes very much to the fore. Flick Haig putting in some impressive early lap times in the 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes. Ian Loggy looked like he was about to challenge her for pole, but then came across the Century BMW through the last corner. That lap time was scuppered, and we thought at the time that might be his hope of taking pole position gone. Ian Loggy, though, is not a man easily deterred, and he put his head down on his next lap and was absolutely flying through the sectors, and in the end the championship leading Mercedes ended up fastest in Q1 for GT3, and Loggy and Callum McLeod will start on pole for race 1 here at Snetterton. It was also an impressive run for Nick Halstead in the Fox Motorsport McLaren. He will line up inside of the top 10 in what is, as always, a very competitive GT3 field. The fastest car in both free practice sessions was the number 4 2Cs Motorsports Mercedes, and James Cottingham put in a strong effort in Q1, third fastest for the yellow number 4 Mercedes. Then into the GT4 session for the first race of the weekend here at Snetterton, and at a circuit at which McLarens have dominated previously. It actually was a group of front-engined cars which made their way to the front over the qualifying session. 10 minutes was all they had to get their lap times in. The Audi has been successful here at Snetterton in the past, but actually wasn't all that productive a day, with Richard Williams managing only 10th on the grid for the opening race of the weekend. Academy Motorsport, though, picked up where they left off at Donington Park. They raced to a race victory last time out from pole position, and will be hoping to do the same thing again after Matt Cowley put in a lap time that was a 10th and a half quicker than anybody else to put the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang at the top of the pile in Q1. They were chased closely, though, will be again in the races tomorrow by the pair of Porsches. Matt Topham, though, blotted his copybook slightly with a high-speed rotation at Rich's corner. He recovered from the grass in the end, but will start deep in the field. For race number 2 within the GT3 ranks then, everyone was expecting to see Mercedes at the front again, and they weren't disappointed, because it's 4 Mercedes who will lock out the top 2 rows for our second 60-minute encounter. Yet again, though, the number 4 car was denied a pole position. Lewis Williamson, despite having been the fastest man in both free practice sessions today, could manage only second position. He was, though, only a 10th of a second slower than Ulissi de Pauw, who celebrated the news that he will be racing that number 15 car for the rest of the season alongside John Ferguson by putting it on pole position. It's his first pole position in the championship, and a new lap record to boot. A 1:45.858 is the new qualifying lap record in GT3. The number 6 car was again in the hunt, with Callum McLeod logging the 3rd fastest lap time in the qualifying session. A productive day perhaps incoming for Ram Racing. Then finally into the GT4 session. In the early stages, all eyes were towards the Ford Mustang, but Marco Senoretti could only manage 7th in the car, which would start on pole for race number 1. BMW were looking a lot more competitive, though. Will Burns, 3rd fastest in Q2, and the reigning GT4 champion will have a shot at challenging for race victory, the second at least of these 60-minute encounters. Zenon Fielding left it late to start improving. He was actually late into the session, as has often been the case for Stella, but he logged the 2nd fastest lap time right in the closing stages of qualifying. 3/10 he was, though, slower than the pole sitter. Joe Wheeler had a big moment through the first corner in the Ginetta, which will start down in 8th on the grid, but it's R Racing's Aston Martin, the 16-year-old Jamie Day, fastest in Q2, and he will have pole position for the second race here tomorrow at the Snetterton 300 circuit.